Good afternoon to all of you. On behalf of the Trulaske College of Business, I'm pleased to welcome you all to the sixth edition of our Business Insider series, hosted by the Trulaske College of Business in collaboration with our partners at MU Extension and Engagement. My name is Ajay Winze. I serve as Dean of the Trulaske College of Business, and it is certainly my privilege and a pleasure to welcome you all and to introduce this session today. Today's session is somewhat unique, a little different from what we have done in the past. Today's session is actually a build to something we've done in the past, and this is mainly on account of the widespread positive response we got to the last webinar we had, the webinar that focused on stormy weather, managing organizational culture. Our participants and panelists will remain the same, as will our moderator today, and they will be looking at issues that they shared with you previously, and now building on those issues and really sharing with you on where to go next, this time focused on organizational climate and the winds of change. Each of our participants comes from a uniquely situated company and position. Our panelists represent 4 different organizations, each with unique aspirational cultures, and they're different places, if you will, in their journey in this space. Each of the organizations they represent use best practices for measuring climate and keeping their fingers on the pulse of employee engagement. They all face unique challenges, certainly in these COVID times. So I'm going to stop here and welcome you all and welcome our panelists and thank them once again for stepping up to share their experiences with us. So I'm going to turn it over to Daryl Smith, Professor of Management here in the Trulaske College. Thank you very much. Daryl, all yours.
Thank you, Dean Benze, for that introduction. It is absolutely my honor and privilege to host today's session. As the Dean has mentioned, this is a follow-up to our December 11th session on organizational culture and climate. And I'm absolutely pleased to have all 4 of our business insiders returning for today's session, and we will hear from them momentarily. Our topic today is managing organizational climate, the winds of change. Our business insiders, our experts are Peter Callan, MU Healthcare, Lenore Maglione, Emerson Electric, Melanie Moore, Bayer Corporation, and R.T. Sharma from MasterCard. Happy to have each of our business insiders with us today. I want to thank our panelists in advance for their insights and expertise. I want to thank all of our attendees who have signed in from various locations around the country. I understand that we have over 200 attendees registered for today's session. We'll check the actual count here in just a second. I will begin today's session by just giving some context, providing a few definitions relative to organizational culture and climate. Next, I will ask our panelists to introduce themselves and their companies. Additionally, I want each of our panelists to complete the following sentence. In my organization, we have a culture of, and then you fill in the blank. For example, the Walt Disney Company has a culture of storytelling, and I think they do an amazing job with that culture. Following our introductory remarks, I have some prepared questions for the panelists, including a few questions that were submitted live during our last session, but we simply ran out of time and did not get to all of the questions. And finally, we should have ample time for more questions from our live attendees. That's my hope anyway. And we will be using the Q&A function for receiving your questions. I am confident this is going to be lively and informative. So let's get started. As we mentioned last time, culture is essentially the operating system of the company. It is the company's DNA. It might include certain traditions, certain values, rituals. Organizations lead their culture. It is linked to strategy, mission, vision, values. According to the Gallup organization, ideally, your company culture is going to help drive performance. It's going to help you attract the best talent. It's going to create organizational alignment. The best companies, they articulate their ideal culture well. They do it across all levels of the organization. They relentlessly chase the aspired culture. So before I ask our panelists to introduce themselves and their companies, let's play a quick game of word association. I will give you the name of a company. It will be a Fortune 500 company. And I want you to write down the first three words that come to mind. Are you ready? The name of the company is 3M. The company is 3M. Okay, so which words came to mind first? Maybe Minnesota Mining and Mineral Company. Maybe some of their products, Scotch tape, Post-it notes, and these days, perhaps the N95 mask come to mind. For many of us, the term that came to mind is innovation. At 3M, they are very proud of their culture of innovation. Just a quick fun fact, at 3M, their engineers are able to spend 15% of their work time on product design ideas of their own choosing. I think that's pretty unique. Okay, so let's hear from our business insiders. Panelists, if you would please introduce yourself, give your name, title, your company, maybe an important fact about your company or organization, and of course, complete our sentence. In my organization, we have a culture of, and Peter, if you would be so kind as to go first.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And Dean Vinze and Professor Smith, thank you so much for inviting me back again. Delighted to be here. I'm Peter Callan, and I serve as the Senior Director of Talent at MU Healthcare, which is a health system here in Columbia, Missouri, with about 10,000 employees. It's comprised of 5 hospitals, about 60 outpatient clinics, schools of medicine, nursing, and health professions. One important fact about a little piece of trivia, actually, there are 114 counties in Missouri, and every year we see at least one patient from every single county, from all 114 every year. So going on to talk about culture, in our organization, we use a framework called a culture of yes. And the culture of yes really is a kind of a framework of 10 behaviors which we model and live every day. And then we describe how we want to interact with each other and, more importantly, with our patients. And we use the neuroscience of how to ingrain that in people's minds. We repeat it over and over again. We prompt it, we open meetings with it, we close meetings with it. We highlight examples of the culture of yes. So it's people that just automatically think on these 10 behaviors all the time. And they really have come to light in the past year. So if I were to use words to describe our culture in this past year working in healthcare, I would use the words compassionate, supportive of each other, highly resilient, and then the other one, which I hope I will never use again when we're talking about that year, I would use the word tired. But when you work in healthcare, I am simply in awe of our housekeepers and food service people and our nursing assistants and all the others that make up our workforce, and the way that they've really just embraced a difficult year on multiple levels, which we'll talk about later. And that is when you actually see a culture shining through. They're here and they really are here for each other and our patients. So thank you, Daryl.
It's a hard act to follow, Peter. Very, very well said. I'm delighted to be here. I'm Lenore Maglione. I have the privilege of serving and working at Emerson Electric. We are a 130-year-old global manufacturing giant, very well respected, headquartered here in St. Louis, Missouri. So that's where I'm coming to you from. We had a robust and wonderful conversation the last time. So it is fun to be back here and explore this age-old question about culture and climate over and over again. As far as Emerson, if I were going to say what is our culture and what would we be known for, I would say that we are a culture of sustained success in innovative problem solving. We are renowned as innovative problem solvers. We're engineers at heart, Consider it solved, never been done before. Those are words that we would use to describe our approach, not only to serving our customers and the markets we're in, but in how we work together. So that in itself, innovative problem solvers and never been done before, indicates that we are always in a constant change, reinventing ourselves and changing. And with any of that in a culture, there's a lot of wonderful things that come from that as we're collaborating and working together, as change is hard for people. And we have to face a lot of different things. So as we look at that and we're thinking about that, our culture is one of change, constant change and improvement. And it's not without pain, though. But because we have that mantra of consider it solved, never been done before, even when a hard year like this last year has faced us, we have been able to come up with ways to embrace it and to still be able to meet our customers' needs, to do things internally for our employees that have continued to grow our climate in the direction that supports not only our performance results, but supports the climate where people want to come here and work here and stay here. And that's what we want. They want to be coming in here, not because they have to. And that's a key word. We've got commitment versus compliance.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melanie Moore, and I'm excited to be back again on this panel. So thanks for having me back. I work at Bayer Corporation. I was a part of the acquisition of Monsanto Company here in the St. Louis area that happened a little over 2 years ago. Bayer has 100,000 employees globally, working in 3 divisions. So pharmaceuticals, consumer health, which is a division that has our over-the-counter products like Aleve, Bayer aspirin, et cetera. And then the crop science division, which is where the Monsanto acquisition came into play. Our mission is health for all, hunger for none. So that's really what we drive towards when we think about our products and how we serve our customers. When I think about our culture, I would say we have a culture of life, which life stands for leadership, integrity, flexibility, and efficiency. And those things are integrated into everything we do, whether it's from performance management to our interview guides to looking at how we hire people, as well as 360-degree feedback that we give to our leadership team. So it's truly ingrained in how we work and how we think and how we operate. So I'm happy to be here.
And we'll go to Arti.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me back again. I am Arti Sharma, and I work at MasterCard as a vice president for their technical operations. We are, again, our ONT, our operations and technology headquarters is here in St. Louis. So very proud that we're right here, very close by with you all. Fun fact about MasterCard, I don't know if you all know, but we process around 500 million transactions across 200 countries in close to 100 currencies every single day securely. We are also one of the very few companies that now actually have a sound linked to our logo. So if you have not noticed, next time when you go swipe your card or do a PayPal or PayPass or just tap, listen to the music as soon as the sound gets approved or your transaction gets approved. There will be a 3-second music at the end of it. So next time when you use your MasterCard, hear that music. Our culture is definitely what we live by is DQ or decency quotient. Very, very ingrained in our day-to-day of what we do here at MasterCard. And then again, big into doing well by doing good, giving back to the community in a great way. Thank you, Daryl.
Excellent. Those are amazing responses. Thanks, Insiders. You've gotten us off to a great start. I took a few notes in terms of culture and what your companies are known for. And it might be unfair for me to only highlight one of them, but I really love the LIFE acronym at Bayer. Good stuff. Thank you very much. So let's go to, let's keep the conversation going by going to the next question. This next question was actually submitted last time from Olivia Hunt. Olivia is a recent graduate of the Trulaske College of Business. And Olivia's question is, it's around culture, but let me tee it up just a little bit. Climate can be measured. We measure it with employee engagement surveys. We have focus groups. We have other methods for measuring climate. But what about culture? At your firms, do you have a way of measuring culture? How do you know that you are moving in the right direction? You have this aspirational culture that you want to achieve. How do you measure it to know that you're moving in the right direction? And this time, RT, if we could start with you and then perhaps move to Peter, Lenore, and then Melanie.
Sure, thank you. So the question does say that there are a lot of engagement surveys and employee surveys that each company does conduct, and culture is something that employees work and feel. I mean, they have to be passionate about while working at an organization and what organization celebrates and we all as employees stand for during challenging times. To me, that's what culture is. So perfect examples, I'm going to give you 2 examples. As soon as the COVID had hit, we were trying to help some of the small business firms, and the CEO had an open town hall, and he had said, first 50 volunteers or first 50 people, please email me if you're interested. This was besides your day job, if you're interested to help out. Within a minute, he had over 500 responses. And they had to close his email out because he wanted people to directly email to him. So that was one example. The other was similarly when in June we had the whole solidarity movement started last year, the chief diversity officer again had to set up a work stream to include the D&I people and create a new work stream to see where else MasterCard can put their focus. And last time, just repeating again, because a lot of you maybe knew last time, MasterCard has committed to $500 million to the community for to increase the awareness of Black communities and their businesses. And St. Louis is actually one of those cities here. So the chief diversity officer made this announcement, and again, there was an overwhelming response to go and help out, that they actually had to put a screening before they could just say, yes, these are the top 50 volunteers. So when we do something like this and all the employees are more than happy and willing to help out, to me, I feel that we're doing something right. And then recently we were recognized as the best place to work for the LGBTQ equality by the Human Rights Campaign. We were also, we made it to the Glassdoor's best places to work as well. So definitely speaks pretty highly of where MasterCard's culture is.
Excellent. I heard lots of comments there, RT, that relate to inclusion and belonging, and that is certainly important. Let's hear from Peter on the same question.
Thank you. I'm probably older than everybody else in this panel, I believe. So I've been in healthcare for almost 40 years, and I find that I don't need to measure culture. I can walk into any hospital in the world, I believe, and assess culture within minutes simply by walking down the hallway. I think oftentimes as leaders, we sometimes may think we have to have a survey to assess culture when we actually don't. I think that you can tell it by the smiles of your employees, if people are giving you feedback, if people are participating in meetings. And just like Artie said, in this past year, we had opportunity to go to our workforce to say, we need to do something different. And it just happened, because oftentimes we're starting to get short-staffed. We asked people like me who don't normally work with patients. Suddenly dozens of us were there in the evening time, just running errands for patients, getting water and getting pillows. And it just shows that the culture people are all in. So some of the ways I think nonetheless that you can actually measure culture, we use the Gallup surveys, and they are primarily geared towards engagement, but there are some questions on there around your attachment to the mission of the organization, and also about if my opinion counts. And I find if those 2 questions are being answered in the closer to the higher end, that is one indicator of a robust culture, positive culture. The second is we also add some other questions on there, questions like, I'm comfortable being myself, which really goes around to the whole issue of all being a wholly inclusive environment. And more recently, would you refer somebody here for employment or for care? Because if our employees do not want to refer someone, their friend to work here or their parents for a care, then we have opportunity to do. So I find that those are our ways to measure it. And then I think as leaders in business, long-term culture will translate to an Excel spreadsheet. And culture, you can see long-term positive culture in market share, in customer retention, in sales, in profitability, and reduction in turnover. But most importantly, we're just opening up a large multidisciplinary research center here. And our ability to attract top talent from across the world here will also be an indicator of our culture. So I think there are both formal and informal ways to assess culture. But as leaders, I think you also sense it if you're honest. Thank you, Daryl.
Yes, Peter, I love that MU Healthcare is using the Gallup survey. And, you know, it's been around for a long time, not the survey, but what's been around for a long time is managing by walking around.
Yep.
Right? You said you can feel the culture if you walk, you know, the organization. And so that does not go out of style. Let's hear from Lenore on the same question.
Well, I could only kudo everything that they've already said, because there are very quantifiable ways to measure your culture, and it shows up in your performance results and all the other things. So we're very much aware of that. And then we also heard some of those qualitative ways when you walk in and you see the engagement and people seeking feedback, people giving feedback, you see the collaboration. You have a lot of people volunteering for everything. Those are the qualitative ways that you're looking to measure those. And it's really a combination of both of those that you need to pay attention to. You know, you can espouse and have a lot of espouse beliefs, values, and everything else, but you also have to, as an organization, look and see things such as, if I say we're a culture of innovation, if I invest all my resources into existing products, then I'm not really supporting that culture of innovation. And I'm sending mixed messages then to the people who are leading and actually running the businesses. So we have to be able to look and ask ourselves some tough questions as businesses, and we can espouse anything, but how are we living those type of things? So it really gets down to the quantitative and qualitative way we look at that. Now here at Emerson, we're doing something a little unique that I know of, and we use the standard things everybody else uses to measure culture, and we've been doing it for a long time, since 1954 actually. But we're taking it to the next level. Oftentimes these survey results and everything else, when we get them back, it's a lot of broad general information, and we follow up with focus groups. But sometimes our managers just don't know how to wrap their hands around that and what steps to take to actually improve the climate someone experiences day in and day out when they come in and work. So we're taking it to that next level, and we're actually surveying and providing the opportunity for our employees to give their managers, their leaders, feedback along 6 climate dimensions that we know create a great culture. And the result is all the things that have been mentioned so far, the engagement, all those things. It gets you that discretionary effort when they exist. It supports performance. When they don't exist, it hinders performance. So about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, we started on this search to be able to actually do a lot of diagnostic feedback for our managers on that level. So that's another way that we're taking this and looking at it, in addition to measuring and all the other things that I've mentioned. So that's another aspect that you can measure. We do know that the number one impact on culture, number one factor that impacts culture, is that leader, more so than anything else. In fact, it's been said that it's as much as 70% of the differential in climates that someone may experience can be attributed to that leader. So that's why we've taken it even to that level here at Emerson.
Thanks, Lenore. Thanks for pointing out that while culture and climate are different, there's certainly a relationship between the two. You also referenced leaders or managers, and we know that employees don't leave companies, they leave bosses. And so that's really important. Melanie, anything to add to the conversation as it relates to measuring culture before we make our transition to climate?
Yeah, I'll just add just in a couple of thoughts that are different from my fellow panelists. Is the other thing that we have to look at is social media presence, right? So everybody knows social media is really huge right now. So whether that's LinkedIn, whether that's Glassdoor, you know, because people that are commenting on those platforms are not necessarily employees. It could be candidates, it could be customers, it could be, you know, really anyone. So really assessing how you show up and reading those comments and taking a look at that on social media also helps you assess culture as well. I think another thing to think about is, I distinctly remember a conference that I spoke at a couple years ago. This was right before the acquisition was final. So I was representing Monsanto, and it was at a conference in San Francisco. And if you know anything about Monsanto, we were known for genetically modified foods. So that's very controversial, especially in the San Francisco area. So the organizer of the conference knew it was very controversial to have me come. He got lots of comments saying, why is Monsanto here? We don't like them. We don't want them, And so I knew that I was going to get a lot of questions semi-attacking the organization. And so, I was prepared for that. But what was great afterwards was I had a line of people waiting to meet me to tell me how I changed their view of the company just from how I presented information and how I shared information with them. And, it's about being genuine in your delivery. It's about keeping it real, right? So people appreciate that. And so I think that's another way culture can show up, is how you represent your organization and how people receive the information that you're giving out. So outside of what the other panelists said, which is all true information as well, that's something else to think about.
Excellent. Thank you, Melanie. And you're having a good conversation when someone says keeping it real. So so thanks for that. We're going to transition slightly. We're going to transition to climate. And climate is the current perception of the organization's employees, as we all know. It is the firm's psychological environment. Often that climate is influenced by leadership, which we've already mentioned. Could be influenced by recent organizational changes. Melanie just mentioned merger acquisition with Monsanto and Bayer, or just other competitive forces. Let me quote a famous Missourian. Climate is what we expect. Weather is what we get. And while that might be true of the weather, the axiom is actually quite different in organizations, as I think we mentioned last time. In organizations, it might be more accurate to say that culture is what we expect, but climate is what we get. And organizations must manage the climate. So speaking of the winds of change, the title of today's session, there is no doubt that we are in a period of change at a macro level, and then likely even within our respective organizations. The winds of change in this past year have included the pandemic, political division, economic downturn, and racial injustice. Within your respective organizations, we've likely experienced significant change. There was a question last time from Trulaske College of Business student Sophia Rivera Hasmer. Let's look at her question now. What specific challenges has your organization faced in the past year, and how has it impacted organizational climate? And then if I could add to her question, if there's a program or initiative that you have implemented to improve climate, can you describe that program or initiative for us, please? And if we can this time, Lenore, I'd like to start with you.
Okay, so if I were going to recap our year and what we faced even prior to the pandemic, we had an activist investor issue that we were dealing with here at Emerson. Then when that was starting to settle down, then we went into the pandemic and everything else you mentioned, from the racial injustice. We've had furloughs here. We've had downsizing occur. We've had reorganization in our company. All of these things have hit us. And have hit us hard like everybody else. And again, it's not easy. Those type of things aren't easy to deal with. And here's where I think some of Emerson's mindset of that culture description comes into play. Instead of shutting down, running away, not addressing it, turning an eye to things, that consider it solved mindset means we have a new challenge or many challenges in front of us. So what are we going to do as an organization to pull together and get through this and come out on the other side? And so that mindset of innovation and different things has led us to continue some things that are working very well, revisit other things. One thing that comes to mind is over the last several years, we have been moving from a multi-conglomerate kind of separate running operational system to everybody coming together as one Emerson with shared purposes, shared values, shared competencies, our systems, everything else have been coming together. We continued to build that and move forward. And that's really been helping all of us. Some of the benefits is our ability to serve customers in the pandemic, to solve some of the issues they were facing, partnering with our suppliers, collaboration within the organization, breaking down walls, engagement, increase in innovation, increase in clarity of what we're here to do, why we're doing, and the purpose it serves. We have seen, one of them is employee resource groups, which we've had for a while, but we've had a greater return and focus on them. And now looking at them, not as just where people can come together and talk, but they're now strategic partners in this organization moving forward and creating the right kind of climate and environment we want. We have top leaders now that are championing all of these different groups that we have. We've seen an increase in enrollment. We've seen feedback, an increase in people feeling safe to come in and be who they are in their authentic self, and to have open, honest, get it real kind of dialogue in our organization. We've seen a lot more participants, a lot of people feel safer to ask each other tough questions that they never would have asked before, that sometimes you would see, particularly with you're seeing racial injustice. There's a lot more openness in the LGBTQ community for people to ask questions and to feel safe and entering into dialogue and courageous conversations and just being real with each other of what it's like to be you, what it's like to be me, and showing up in the workplace. So we've done a lot more with our resource groups, and that has had a tremendous impact here with that. So those would be a couple of the things that I would say. It's not a time to shut down and run. It's a time to listen, communicate, solve, and move forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Lenore.
Yeah,
Melanie,
great,
please.
Lenore. You know, one of the things you just said actually happened with me, and which I had no plans of sharing at that time during that meeting, but in light of all of the racial injustices that were happening, you know, I shared with my leadership team what it's like to be raising a Black son. You know, it's scary. And the conversations that I've had to have with him, even though he's only 9, of, you know, here's the things that are happening, and here's why, and here's what you have to look out as being a brown little boy. So it's hard. And, you know, I never anticipated to share that in the work environment, but at the time in the conversations that we were having, I felt it was appropriate to be able to help my colleagues understand the things that I'm going through personally, dealing with some of the things that's happening in the country right now. So that's just a personal thing. But from a work perspective, when we think from a pandemic standpoint, of course, you know, we did like most companies, everybody moved to working from home. But one of the great things that came out of that is that we created a new task force that we call our next normal, right? So we don't want to go back to the same ways of working pre-pandemic, right? Because literally I traveled to Germany every single month. And of course I was traveling business class. So flights would be $6,000, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 just for the flight. I'm staying in a hotel for a week, you know, and doing that every month with my entire team. So the amount of money that was spent with us traveling every single month to an international location is like, okay, we figured out now over the past year, we don't really have to do that, right? So that's one of the things that, you know will change once everything is quote back to normal, is that we won't work the same way. And I think that's a positive. You know, everyone has open their eyes and realize that, okay, we can get things done via video, via email, via calls, without having to travel in person. And I think the other piece from a pandemic standpoint is being flexible with ways of working. You know, my son is still at home doing distance learning now. So being able to offer that flexibility of, hey, when my son has a test and I need to help him get logged on, I'm not scheduling meetings during that time. So just having that flexibility to be able to take care of home and work. And I think that's important for employers to realize and to do, that it's not an easy thing trying to manage everything from home. So just having that flexibility with your employees is important. From a racial and social injustice standpoint, we issued a statement from our U.S. president. We had some open dialogue sessions similar to what Lenore was talking about, where people can share their thoughts and share their feelings. We've also brought in a lot more inclusion and diversity speakers, external speakers in for people to be able to dial in and just learn. I think that was a big gap, is that people just don't know what they don't know. So we're offering up resources and tools for people to learn more about other cultures and other backgrounds. So that's just a few things from a Bear standpoint.
And Melanie, if I might add an additional question for you. I mean, as I think about Bear, and you've gone through this major merger and acquisition over the last year or so, what impact did that have on employee climate?
Yeah, no, it was hard. I'm not gonna pretend like it wasn't a difficult change, So Monsanto was also a global organization. We had about 20,000 employees, where Bayer has about 100,000 employees. So that alone, just the size in nature was very different. I think the other thing is that Monsanto worked more on the mindset of, hey, if you have an idea, let's try it and see if it works. If it doesn't work, that's okay. So we would have a lot of ideas and a lot of activities going at the same time, which, can be chaotic, right? In some scenarios, but then in other scenarios, when it works out, it's like, hey, we have this new technology that's doing this, and it's great, and it's going to help our customers and help the company. Where Bear's aspect is more of, we're going to work on one thing and we're going to make sure it's right before we develop it. And so it was very hard transition for legacy Monsanto employees, because we were so used to trying 10 different things at once and not necessarily having it all built out, to 100% accuracy. We used to call it build the plane as we're flying it. That's what what we used to call in legacy Monsanto, where in Bear is, no, you're going to build the plane and check it twice before it ever takes off. So that was one of the challenges that we faced as employees from a culture standpoint, that we all had to get used to how to work differently.
Excellent. Thank you. So not uncommon during mergers and acquisitions for there to be two totally different cultures, and that clash can certainly impact employee climate as well. Let's go to Artie and then Peter. And of course, our question right now is around climate and all of the change that we've seen in the last year or so and its impact on organizational climate. And Artie, we would love to hear from you right now.
Yeah, so last year, one of the biggest challenges, and as I said, MasterCard's operations and technology headquarters is here in St. Louis. So even though in March, everybody started working from home, still all the essential workers had to come in because our data center is in St. Louis. So one of the biggest challenges was how to keep the organization safe and the space safe for all these employees who still have to come into these different shifts, and social distancing was a big deal. I think so the way the company reacted to it and was just brilliant. The way the feedback that the employees were sharing randomly in meetings as to what MasterCard has done inside the building, started sharing pictures of things. I mean, it was such a great motivation to see, oh, maybe it is safe to go in and that we can go in once the lockdown is open. There was a lot of communication directly from the upper management, very transparent communication, especially when the lockdowns started opening, when the location started opening in each country had a different lockdown policy. One of the biggest issues that we faced was the perception that people felt during the surveys when we were asked that, what if my manager starts going into the office, but I'm still working from home? Does that make me feel that I will not have a good end-year review? Or what if my full team is going and maybe I have an autoimmune disorder and I cannot go into the work, right? So how does all of that play into my feedback and my review for the year end? So to this, I think this feedback was taken very seriously, because this was a lot of people had actually put it in the comments. So it was a lot of great insights to it. The management took it very seriously. And I think they made an announcement clearly saying, we are ready as an organization. We've created a very safe space for as an organization. We are ready when you are. So they started using that tagline, we are open and ready when you are. There is no pressure for you to come in. Please continue working from home for as long as you feel you need to keep yourself safe or your family safe, or homeschooling or taking care of older parents and things like that. I think that flexibility, I think, Melanie, you talked about that flexibility was the key to success during last year and still continuing. That was just a great help to be able to log out for 2 hours and go run an errand, or, go pick my son from school and then come back and do my day job, maybe till 7 p.m. So that flexibility helped a lot. For doing well by doing good, MasterCard is always, like I said, is a big proponent of this, and we definitely walk the walk. We do get 5 Volunteers Day every year to go do whatever we want to in the community. Last year, we added one more as the Solidarity Day. So now we actually get 6 volunteer days. We can take 12 half days or 6 full days, whatever it may be, with Girl Scouts, with anything that I want. It has to be my passion, what I want to do. It's not mandated by MasterCard that these 6 days have to be, devoted to these XYZ organizations. So wherever I feel I can use that. And then based on so much inequality and injustice happening, our business resource group that leads our African-American employees started sharing real stories about what it is to be raised in a community that was being looked down upon at that time. Those stories resonated a lot and felt real. So Melanie, when you were giving your example that you shared the same within your leadership team, I think I can totally see the impact that it could have brought to your people, because it was very impactful when these stories were shared on a weekly basis. They just randomly took 2 people and had a webinar saying, come listen to these 2 people and their stories and how they're raising their kids. So very impactful. One fun thing that we did just to ease out the employees, we did Bring Your Kids to Work Day virtually. So that was awesome. We did it over 3 days. Usually MasterCard does allow kids to go into school, but we didn't do it last year. So that was pretty good. We engaged the kids because they were all off from school. So MasterCard made sure the kids are engaged for 3 full days while parents can work. And then it was so successful that throughout the summer vacation, as the camps were closed, MasterCard actually did an online virtual science and math camp free for kids who wanted to enroll. So that again helped parents keep the kids busy on their own laptops while they were working. So these were some of the things that we did in 2020.
Excellent. Thank you, RT. And we have some live questions coming in now, but before we go to those questions, let me just check in with you, Peter. Anything to add to our question?
Yeah. First of all, I'm getting lots of ideas from my fellow panelists here. I wish I could forget that year, but last year we found that there was so much information coming from all different levels. We had to really double down our communication, and we already had a lot of multiple lines of communication to our staff. We find we had to amplify that a lot by having town halls. We end up having weekly town halls. Adding to that, we established one source of truth. So we had one place to go where if anything was happening in our community or health system, you go to this one part of the website to find out the most recent update rather than rumor. Our chief nursing officer, Dr. Mary Beck, also started to talk a lot about showing grace. And what that means is don't assume something's bad. Don't assume somebody else's attention. Show a little bit of grace, because everybody was under a lot of pressure. I find that very helpful as well. Then we also have an in-house clinical psychologist for our workforce and well-being. So instead of having all of our meetings online be around looking at spreadsheets and an agenda, we also carved out a lot of time at the end of it for some self-reflection, some mindfulness, and some little piece of advice you could take with you. And here's one I'll give to you. This is called the free with purchase piece of advice here. Dr. Craig Rooney is our psychologist. He described to us, starting in July, August, September, October, he said, you already know who you're going to vote for. You know there's a pandemic. You know what you should do. Turn the news off and turn social media off and just eliminate that negativity from your life. And he would repeat it over and over and over again. Last year, probably the single big thing though that comes to mind was whatever's happening in our society happens in our workforce as well. So with the very public killings, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and many, many others, along with political unrest, is putting it mildly, that happens to our employees. So we had to make sure that our employees felt safe and listened. And we went out on a wing here. We didn't know what we were doing, but we just set up scheduled listening sessions with no agenda, just to allow people to talk. And we found that when we didn't have an agenda, just allow people to talk and allow silence, uncomfortable silence, it worked. And as a result, then we end up having quite a few people participating in loosely organized participation in the nightly demonstrations at our courthouse, and then some more formal kneel-ins as well. But the long-term residual from that is the membership in our African Heritage Network has exploded now of people from all backgrounds. And we already had adopted setting up a food pantry for our patients. And now with so many people involved, it's really taken off. So that year was a bad year, but I'm hopeful that some good things will come out of it.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. I'm pretty sure that last time in this session, we talked about workplace stress and we looked at a few of the key statistics. And so certainly having counseling services available is really important at this time. So let's go to a live question, a question from Nathan. And Nathan, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to tee up your question just a little bit. Let me share a weather fact with you since we have a weather theme going here. While Doppler radar can detect funnel clouds as they form in the atmosphere, Doppler radar cannot tell you when a tornado has actually touched the ground. And so I'm going to use that as a lead in to Nathan's question. Given that so many of our employees are working remotely, some would say as many as 50%, we can't actually see and touch and communicate maybe as effectively with employees. How do you know what the climate is, given that so many people are working remotely? And then how can you improve climate in today's world, again, when so many employees are working remotely? And Peter, since you are up right now, do you mind taking that one on?
Sure. Difficult question, Nathan, and I don't have the answer. I think it is new for us. We have a goal of having 15% of our workforce working remotely all the time. Where we're going with this is we had already ingrained two things into the way that we communicate and work with all of our workforce. We have what we call monthly rounding, which means every single employee has a one-on-one conversation with their supervisor once a month. And that is somewhat scripted. And so we tailor the questions either around messaging or to solicit feedback. So I think that we're going to continue doing that, except now that we're doing it remotely, we also have a little rule, by the way, in our organization that if you're on a Zoom meeting, you must have your camera on. And we ask people to participate fully as well. So we're going to continue with our one-on-one monthly roundings. We also abandoned our performance evaluations about 4 or 5 years ago. The traditional once-a-year evaluation, which the data show are not just useless, they're actually counterproductive. So we replaced those with 4 times a year, much more in-depth conversations about how you're doing, what do you want to do, what do you want to learn, how can we help you? And I see that those conversations will help us manage this as well. But I think it's still to be determined how well because we were very much a centralized office type of culture and one location. We're still learning as we go. I wish I had all the answers so far.
Thank you, Peter.
So
And
Daryl,
Lenore, how many employees work remotely versus on-premise at Emerson Electric? And how does that impact climate?
You know, I don't have the exact number domestically. We are almost all back and we have been back. I will share personally that I left to work remotely last year around March the 19th. I came back on May the 1st. We're an essential business and we're considered that as many of the others are. And so we were back in the office when it was safe enough for us to be back. And one of the key things, and I've heard it spoken earlier, is that at the forefront of our leadership's mind was how can we make it safe for people to come back? Now, I'm physically back here in the office, but there are people working remotely, and they weren't all back in May. So we had this kind of A-B ship that was going with a lot of them. Now, our European and global other facilities, they're in a different timetable governed by the rules and laws of those countries. And a lot of them are still remote or on their second stance of working remotely. None of our plants shut down, and they were still at pretty much full throttle. Business, we were supplying a lot of things to help with the COVID vaccine and all those type of things. So we were one of those essential businesses that needed to be there. If I look and think about, and we don't have all the answers, this is evolving, but I will share just a personal story of what it can look like when you have all the right elements of climate together. So we were called back into the office, and we were tasked to be able to continue the development of our employees, of building their skills, providing the resources, the tools, the things that they needed to work remotely and to be collaborative as possible. But from an example for us here, that meant we had to start converting everything virtually. Emerson is a high-touch organization. We like to have face-to-face contact. We think that's a real differentiator in the way we work with each other and the way we work with our customers. But lo and behold, that was gone. And so we had to come up with a new way to reinvent ourselves through use of all the different platforms, the virtual platforms that were there. And just like Peter, having the camera on, but it called for different skill sets. I think one of the greatest things that we did here is we came together with the team, and our leader said, this is the situation in front of you. How can we solve it? And I would say one of the most delightful times, even during a very serious year, was the way that we came together as a staff and we collaborated. We built our skills, we learned, we pulled on each other's strengths. We were able to put together resources that went out globally and trained tens of thousands of employees and helped them get the skills and tools and resources they needed to be able to do the work that they had to do remotely. And that was done, as we were going along inventing that. So while it's been a terrible year, there are good things that have come out of it. We know we're resilient. We know we're adaptable. We know how to persevere. And most of all, we know how to listen. And I think that's one of the key things when you're facing difficult years and you want to still manage your employees and engage with your employees is listen. Just stop always talking and listen. And then take what they're saying and work together to come up with workable solutions. And I think that we've excelled at that in many, many levels. It's been tough, but I think that you can excel, and it can give you a new level of energy and resilience to carry forward with you. So that's just something that I would add to that.
Excellent. Thank you, Lenore. And so just kind of going back to our question, our fun weather fact of, tornadoes being difficult to detect. So I'll go to Melanie and then RT. Could there be something brewing out there? Could there be some bad weather within your workforce, but because workers are remote, maybe we're not able to see it? Any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, so honestly, I think there's always a storm brewing, whether it's in person or virtual. It's how that leader manages their team, right? That to be able to detect when things are going wrong. So, having an open door policy or an open video policy, whatever you want to call it, making sure that leader makes their team comfortable enough to come to them to have any conversation without retaliation, I think is key. And I think, and one thing that I wanted to make sure to highlight is that there's still ways to do team building activities even when you're virtual. One of the things that we did was we hired a trivia company to come do virtual trivia with our team for an hour. And like most HR teams, we're super competitive. So everybody wants their team to win, right? So just getting a break from the norm, right? So we're all on video all day in meetings and things, but that was just a break from the norm. one of the other things that one of our business resource groups did recently, just last week, was they put on a bingo session, but they made the bingo cultural. So it was put on by our Latin network, and the bingo spaces were all different Latin cultural things, whether it was foods or statues or locations or whatever. And so we got to learn about a different culture while also playing bingo with our colleagues around the country. So, I think there's just different ways to keep employees engaged and keep them excited for working at your company outside of the normal check-ins and conversations and things.
Excellent. So we certainly have to be more creative. So virtual team building, and I don't mind saying I'm a big fan of virtual happy hour. Let's go to Artie, please.
Yeah, to add on to what Melanie was saying, we've done virtual happy hours. We have done a lot of Christmas gatherings. We did, like, everybody had to dress up in Christmas outfits and keep their videos on. We had, voted for the best outfit. And so there are a lot of ways to keep the employees engaged. And it was very, very needed. One thing that our CEO made the announcement last year during 2020 was that there would not be any layoffs that will be COVID related, right? So there will not be any financial impact will not happen to the employees. So yes, there's a storm always brewing. Even if there are people in person, there is always somebody who may not be interested or may not be the right fit. The person may be an excellent person, but may not be the right fit for the job that he or she is performing. So just to keep them engaged and try to get all of that. And we have a lot of tools online, ALM being one of them. It's a tool that keeps people's productivity always on top. So it tells you that there is data that still tells you that even if I'm working from home, what is my current velocity? Am I putting my 100% in there or 80% in there? So it still tells you the people who, the anomalies, the graph will show off right when there is somebody who is not up to that level where we are expecting productivity to be there. But as the statement was made last year that there will not be any COVID related layoffs, there were people that we, when surveys were taken, that there were people actually who turned around because they thought maybe this is their chance or opportunity to be there. They're getting one more year with the company. Let me help turn it around. And they actually reached out to their managers and said, maybe I need a different role. Maybe this is not, which they had not said earlier. So it kind of, that statement coming out in the public from the CEO, I think helped some of those people turn around too.
Excellent. I am loving this conversation. And we may end up going into overtime, but the folks at Mizzou Video Productions, they told us that that is okay if we go a little bit past 1 o'clock. So let's squeeze in one more question. We have a question from Jessica Wolf. And Jessica, I will try to paraphrase here a bit. But Jessica's question is around talent acquisition, hiring, and selection. And the question pertains to culture. You want to hire people who have a good organizational culture fit with your company. How do you do that? Are there some unique approaches to hiring people that fit your culture? And whoever would like to respond to that question, please go right ahead.
I would love to just give a comment about this because a large part of my work is talent acquisition. I hate the word culture fit because it implies we're going to bring in more of the same people usually. I would prefer to rephrase that, as somebody called Jessica Hardy, who works with me, used the term culture add. So we actually want to add to our culture. I don't think I'm looking for anything culturally. We look for people who are passionate, who are flexible, who want to work hard, but I look for culture add, and that is the broadest possible definition of culture that you can possibly have. And then here in the US, we have such a broad pool. I think that I just personally don't like that comment, culture fit. It is culture add for me.
Yeah.
I think that's valid. I think the other piece of it is doing research on your own to see if you believe that you'll fit into the organization too. So going to Glassdoor, we talked about Glassdoor earlier, going to the social medias, reading some of the posts, reading the comments, and really doing your own research to see if you would be a fit. We used to have this challenge in Monsanto that the first year someone comes into the organization externally, they would have challenges adjusting to the culture. And we were very well aware of it. I worked in TA for the past 20 years. So we were very aware of the culture of Monsanto and how people had challenges adapting to that culture. And it was linked to what I said earlier, is that, hey, if you have an idea, share it. Let's try it. And I remember, distinctly in my first month at Monsanto, being asked, hey, I know you did this at your previous job. How'd you guys do it? And I remember saying, no, I'm new. I don't have anything to add. I'm just going to take notes and do whatever you tell me to do. And they're like, no, actually, you're not. You're going to tell us how you did it at your old company, and we're going to try it and see if that works. And that can be intimidating to people, to be in a culture like that. And so it takes some time to adjust and get used to it, as well. So it's catch-22, right? The culture fit, you don't want to hire more of the same, but you also want people to be able to achieve and strive and do well in your culture as well.
Yeah, there is a similar question on the same topic about, how do we make sure we're not discriminating and we are getting a diverse pool. I was just reading. So I think to add on to what Peter was saying, when we are doing, as a hiring manager, when we are interviewing people, we do get a questionnaire as saying, how many people did we interview? How, we have their race, we have everything about that person, so that we do actually have to, in the end, acknowledge when I'm about to hire someone that I have looked at a big pool of candidates before I am hiring a person A from these pool of candidates, so that it's not like I'm just hiring the same people, or maybe I may have unconscious bias to, oh, this person's looking like this, so I don't want to hire this person. So kind of those questions are asked of a hiring manager before we actually finalize the candidate, to be able to say, yes, this is a right candidate for this organization.
And as we begin to wrap up, Lenore, any final thoughts as it relates to that last question?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
I was going to say, in addition to that, you've got to ask smart questions in your interviews. You have all these things in place. We also use panelists. We don't leave an interview up to just one person. Most of you don't. You bring in a panel, but we try to behaviorally assess and get some read on that person. And that's very important, to ask the right questions in the interview, as well as it is to share for them, in case they haven't done their research, who you are as an organization, because it's a two-way fit here. And if you bring them in and they didn't anticipate any of this about your organization, they're not what they would call a value add to the company, or they don't like the climate, then you've lost a lot. And so you have to do some smart interviewing and behavioral type of questions around that. And I'm sure everybody on the panel and their organizations do that. But that's another step to consider for the individual who asked the question.
Excellent. So thank you very much. Derek, I see your question. I feel like we answered that question. It was very similar to Jessica's. There are other questions that are popping up, and we are simply not going to be able to answer those questions live. So I apologize for that, but we will get back to you with some answers. And so as we begin to close out our session, wow, my goodness, great conversation. This was, backed by popular demand, and feels like we could keep going. So my sincere thanks to Peter, Lenore, Melanie, and RT for serving as our business insiders today. Thanks to all of our participants for attending and for your questions. Again, I acknowledge we did not get to all of the questions, but I promise you that we will follow up. We will have a business insider in February, so be on the lookout for details and the date for that next Trulaske Business Insider. And as we close out, if I could just offer a few more quotes here, and I'll be really selective. I'll make some game time decisions here. Let's go with this one. A smooth sea never made a skillful sailor. That is Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So hopefully we are all building some skills and competence around managing culture and climate. And one more, let's go to the comedian Ellen DeGeneres. Each morning when I wake up, I check the temperature. If the temperature is less than my age, I go back to bed. So again, from all of us here at the Trulaske College of Business, our sincere thanks for joining today's session. MIZ.